Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks podcast. Today, I'm with Amir Elion from Think Big Leaders. I am very excited about this episode. In season 4, we're going to be talking about AI quite a bit, and Amir is really pushing the envelope with the GPTs. How are you doing today, Amir?
I'm great, and I'm really excited to be on the show on this season. I've watched some of your episodes. I love the energy. I think we can definitely have a really interesting conversation for your audience. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Before we jump into Think Big Leaders and the stuff that you're working on right now, I think it's important for people to understand who we are, where we come from, why we do what we do.
Yeah.
So, how did you get here? And then what is Think Big Leaders in your words?
Yeah. So I've had an interesting journey, and I've had the opportunity to experience all types of organizations. So those included like large international enterprises from Amazon to Teva Pharmaceuticals to Motorola, so also across industries. And I had a variety of roles there. I've been director of products in a couple of startups, so like small teams growing them, until they were ready to kind of for the growth stage. And I've been in consulting companies, so I've worn different hats. And that allowed me to see, business from different perspectives. Sometimes I had to do more business development, sometimes more sales, sometimes more product. I've always had to do with technology. So always kind of found my way around because I'm curious around technology, even if the role wasn't, formally a technology role. I always kind of injected technology there. And maybe one more thing about myself that kind of will also explain how I got here is no matter what my role was, like even in large organizations, so I had like training manager, right? That's the title. But I always kind of expanded it to maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times more because I'm super curious. Even though this is my first company that I own myself, I always saw myself as an entrepreneur or intrapreneur, you could say in some cases. And I love to build, I love to learn new stuff. So that's kind of what drives me. And as for Think Big Leaders, so until 2 years ago, I led the innovation program for Amazon Web Services in the Nordics. So I'm based in Scandinavia, in Stockholm. And in that role, I was sharing how does Amazon think about innovation, and how every business, new service, new product comes out of Amazon with this methodology. And I was sharing this with external audiences. I was speaking to executives of either large companies, startups, but also, public sector organizations, how to think about customer-obsessed innovation, which is, the Amazon way. And that was fun. And I was really seeing a lot of different products and industries and helping people. But then, things being the way they are what happened like 2 years ago, that role was eliminated among other things. And then I was at the crossroad and I wasn't sure, right? Do I go to another organization, a startup, a big one? And luckily I had a few months of grace time with kind of the garden leave that I had. And I took a different approach. I said, I'm going to meet 100 people and I'm going to have lunch with them. I'm going to have, fika, we call it in Sweden, a coffee meeting with them. And I'm just going to listen. But because I have a few months, I'm also going to offer help without expecting anything in return. And I'm not going to ask for a job. I'm not going to ask for a paid gig or anything. I'm just going to build relationships. And I am going to ask, there are people, that I'm going to learn from them. Some of them I knew from before. They were in my network. Some were not. And I just said, okay, that's going to be a learning experience for me. So I really didn't know what I was going to do. This was like 2 years ago. And then out of these 100 meetings, relationship formed. Some of them ended up in nothing, right? I never met that person again. There was no click. There was no brick. And then with some, I really built friendships. When I, in the middle of the meeting, I would say, listen, I have time. Somebody else is paying for my salary for the next few months. Is there anything I can do to help you? And for some people, they were really surprised, right? They're not used to that kind of approach. Anyway, long story short, at least a couple of people, and, I told my background, I do innovation, I do AI, And a couple of them said, yeah, you know what? The timing is just right. I need you to help me with this and that, and it will be a paid project. I mean, I didn't ask for it, but we expect it to be a paid project, and there's lots to do around there. So I said, okay, then I might have as well set up my company. So that's how I started, and I named it Think Big Leaders. So just as background, Amazon has what it calls leadership principles, which basically encapsulate its culture. It started with 10, now it's around 16. It really does play out in the day-to-day life of Amazonians. And that's a lot of what I talked about when I talked about Amazon culture and Amazon innovation culture. And one of them is think big. And it starts by saying, and each leadership principle has like 2 or 3 sentences that kind of capture what does it mean to think big, right? In this case. So I don't remember the whole sentence for think big, but I remember it starts with thinking small is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And leaders lead their teams to think big, right? And have a bold vision, right? So it really that one really resonated with me. So I borrowed Think Big. And because I was thinking, I want to aim for people who lead, even if they're not executives, I want to aim for people who like have a leadership mindset. So I ended up with Think Big Leaders. That's the name. And what I do is I help companies of different sizes and leaders think about innovation mechanisms, about AI and where can it bring value. So that's the main business, but I'm bootstrapping that to also build AI powered applications that bring value to mostly small, medium business. So I know kind of a few minutes of quick history.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. All right. Let's just break some of these things down. First thing that I want to talk about is your startup story for Think Big is similar to mine with Hosterian. And when I was 24 years old, I was at a big telecom company managing big hosting companies or big websites like Wonder Bread and Twinkies and big trucking companies and stuff like that. And that .com bubble was hitting and that company was shutting down. I had a severance package and me and a couple buddies got together and said, hey, let's start our own hosting company. Little did we know that we were able to buy the hosting company that I was working at just a couple months later and did a merger almost instantly. But that 3 months of work severance package that I had allowed me to literally work for free for 3 months and set up the next 25 years of my life.
Wow.
Like, so using that as a resource to go from corporate America to starting your own company, 3 months is, trust me, it was not my first rodeo by far. 3 months is a short runway to get there. Luckily I was able to get in an acquisition quickly to grow our revenue, but it's a big thing that I think people don't think about. And they don't think about, oh, I have money coming in from my severance package. I have this opportunity. I see a lot of people like go to work at a gas station or something silly and they get to double dip. And I'm like, well, that's a very short-minded scenario that you get to double dip for this amount of time.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I've thought of setting my own company in the past. The problem is in our household, I was the kind of the steady income. So I couldn't afford to take too many risks. And this was the first time that I could say, you know what, for 6 months, I can take that risk. And maybe even more if I kind of eat into the buffer a bit. So I was able to take the risk, but even I didn't even have to take the risk because the money started coming in before the garden leave ended. Because in my contract, it was okay for me to start something else and I was still getting paid, right? So I was lucky, or maybe I was the right timing, or the stars aligned. So it ended up not being a risk.
If you watch the show a lot, you can definitely tell who I'm currently studying. Henry Ford's famous for saying, anybody, you can have any color car you want as long as it's black. And for production, that really works. And for a lot of things, it works. And when you want to scale, that works. But when you're starting, and I heard you say a lot of the things that I've had to do is you kind of take the business that you can get to help you get to building your black car, right? So can you talk a little bit about, some of the struggles that you saw taking on ad hoc work to pay the bills while you were trying to make your Model T?
Yes, correct. And so I started, it was very much like you said, it's like taking the projects as they came. And they were very different, right? Some of them could be more hands-on, right? There was a small company that wanted me to help them build a chatbot for, go along with a course that they were building. And I knew I could do it because I'm a builder, because I'm curious, right? So I said, okay, let's take that. By the way, that customer is still with me 2 years on, doing like more strategic stuff and collaborations and partnership. But it started with a small project. I said, okay, I'll start with that. In parallel, another CEO of a kind of 300 IT consulting company told me, you know what? I need you to lead our AI kind of transformation with our leadership team. So that's where it was like more strategic and discovery and, a few months of work. So very different. And I said at the beginning of the first few months, this is kind of the projects that I took. But at the back of my mind, I was thinking, okay, where do I want this to lead to? Right? How do I scale later? And there's some principles that with time I've kind of realized, and also with talking with customers, I realized, yes, I like consulting. I like doing this. I mean, you can scale by raising your prices and, only do so much. But so I want to do that. and it keeps me connected to the field and learning from customers what they need. And I can also scale that a bit if I create like assets and if I remain focused on certain domains. So I became more and more focused on, because I started wider than just AI and innovation, which is wide in itself, right? But with time, I've kind of became more focused. My messaging became more focused. So I turned my kind of custom projects into more products, if you will, or packages that I now am able to talk about with more confidence and also bring evidence and testimonials about. So that's one thing that I did. And the other thing, this I mentioned this shortly before. Now, when I'm thinking about scale, so I don't want to hire more people. I mean, that's a big responsibility. You need to keep, the money going to, and you are responsible for them. And I want to sleep well at night. So that's not my scaling strategy. I do scale through building partnerships. So for example, if I come into a customer and I start the project, I help them figure out, okay, this is what you want to do. This is a business case, but then it gets too technical that it's too much for me, either too technical that I don't know how to do it, or it will take too much time for me. So I've established a network of technical partners. I can bring them in. The customer gets a trusted partner, which I vetted, and I get either I'm involved in the project as kind of a product leader or kind of strategist, or I just hand it over, and then I have a referral agreement with those partners. So that's one way of scaling, and the other one is building those products. So taking what I've accumulated over the years in all those roles, all those companies, and because we now have AI, and we'll probably talk about it more, trying to capture the knowledge that I have from the methodologies, because I'm a very systematic person. I've learned some systematic methodologies, trying to capture those into best practices and into flows that do start with the customer and understand what they need and what kind of guidance and handholding do they need, and kind of putting that into exactly what they need with my intelligence, the best practices built in, with me not needing to do anything except, of course, building the right products, improving them. And so that's my scaling strategy, either through partnerships or through AI powered products.
Absolutely. And it's very important to know how you're going to scale. I like to look at it as BBs, bullets, and cannons is the methodology that I use. BBs are cheap, so I can shoot at a whole lot of targets, right? And I can get paid for those, but I really don't want to make commitments yet until I start hitting bullseyes, right? If I start hitting bullseyes, I upgrade to bullets. Okay, I like this. And then I can upgrade to cannons, and then you just shoot as many as you possibly can. That's how you scale. Where I've had a lot of issues in my life and in business and people are going to run into this, when they're shooting BBs, sometimes they hit a target, they hit some bullseyes, but they don't hit it very frequently. And they have these couple of customers that are hanging around, and they're over here running, and they've got their cannons over here, but this BB that worked, this 1 or 10 or 20 that actually worked, now you're working an ad hoc deal. How do you separate yourself from those so you can focus on your cannons?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so. I've been running this for 2 years. I don't think I've had those many so far of those.
Okay.
Hopefully, I don't run into them, or hopefully, I build enough of the AI products that scale that I don't need to. And my approach there actually is quite similar to what you just said. So I have 50 ideas in my head for products. I'm actually now, we could also talk about it, using. And before that, when I was director of products, I needed to really make difficult decisions on what are we going to build, right? When I was scarce resources of engineering, and it took 3 months to release something, and that. And now I just go to my vibe coding tools. I go to either Claude Code or other things, and I just tell it what I want it to build. Within a weekend, I have a working prototype, and that could be those BBs that I could put out in front of customers, and then I could test my assumptions very quickly. So just to give you an example, yesterday I was participating in Stockholm here in the Nordic Software Summit. It's for scale-ups. I was also like one of the jury members there in a hackathon. And one of these products that I'm just building, and I haven't given it to any of the engineers yet, I've just built it myself, is that marketing AI-powered workflow. And I just went up to people, there was networking set up there, and they were lots of marketing people talking about scaling. And I just showed them on my mobile, hey, would this be useful? And I got immediate feedback on the spot that, by the way, on the evening I came back and I already applied it. I said, hey, do this feature, change this. In my head, I'm going to build 50 or 100. The three that hit that bullseye, I have like concrete evidence that it's worth my time and worth working with the engineers and the technical partners that I have, because there's an audience, because I know I can bring value because I can different.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to point something out here for the world to understand. You're talking about vibe coding, right? And the progression in programming and software development is so absurd right now. To give you an example, I have a back office software package that we've been developing for 25 years. Telephone companies use it for billing like the back in the day we had to bill per second for long distance phone calls and different stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we kind of shined in that kind of software. We had 700 developers working on that nonstop, had 25 different versions of it, all of those things. And this year we were able to upgrade its version of PHP from a deprecated version to a modern version. And it took about 25 minutes of actual human labor,
With
right?
AI agents working for you, and
With giving the code to an AI agent and saying, hey, upgrade every line of code to PHP, whatever version. That's profound, right?
yeah,
And the kind of world that we're looking at. So the amount of applications that are coming to market, the amount of software, the amount of things that you're going to be able to get that are highly customized to you and or your business, it's a different world. You're not looking anymore of walking in the door saying, hey, I want an app for my company, and the price tag starts at $10,000, right?
yeah,
You can really make something over a weekend with some good vibe coders. And I think that it's important for the small business owner to know this right now, because I know I know aggressive marketing tactics, and I know those guys, and I'm friends with some of I'm acquaintances with some of them. I would not call them friends because they will definitely take my money out of my pocket if I wasn't looking. They're going to take advantage of a lot of businesses. A
yes,
lot of businesses are just going to be paying, and upwards to $3,000-$4,000 an hour for vibe coders, uh,
yeah.
to get a product finished, and it's just absurd. I'm a big value for value kind of guy, and I just don't like that kind of tactic. So I think it's important to
Me either. Yeah.
educate the small business owners how simple this stuff is right now.
Yes, and it's going to get simpler because the tools are getting even more powerful and more knowledgeable and more connected and with context. And by the way, that's what I try to do as well. I try to educate those leaders to understand what is possible and what they should be thinking about and what are the opportunities for them as well. Because even if you're a service company and you're a product manufacturing company, now there's new opportunities that before you couldn't even think about, because you could digitize so much faster your data, your experience, your experts, right? And or expand your services or reach new markets. Because before that, if you wanted to move to another state, not to mention another country, there's you couldn't do it because the investment was so big. Now
Yeah.
that there's so much opportunity there, even translating your content or reaching new types of audiences, even within your community, right? So the changes that you can make are so rapid.
I've got a couple books, and I think over the next couple months, when I get a weekend free, I'm republishing in Spanish and German, and those kinds of things, where taking your book and translating it to Spanish and republishing it would have been a $5,000 or $10,000 deal, and I mean it's going to cost me a couple $100,
Yes,
right?
and the quality is better than you would take like a local translator or yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely amazing. All right, I want to flip the switch really quick and go to mindset. We're not going to stick on mindset too long because I'll get lost. Think big and thinking small. And I'll tell you, my story there is when I was a young man, I kept thinking, man, if I could get to $52,000 a year, then I'll have $1,000 a week, and life will be perfect,
Yeah.
right? I'll have life will be perfect if I could just get to $1,000 a week. Nothing will ever bother me again. And I got there pretty quick, and I got there and I kind of went on cruise control. And then, back then, $1,000 a week was a lot more money than it is today. And then I thought, man, if I could just get to $100,000 a year. And then I got there, and then I went on cruise control. And then it was like, oh, if I can generate $1 million revenue, and then, and then it just keeps going up. But what I realized later is that when I was talking to myself and saying, man, if I could just get to 1,000 a week, that was where I was putting my ceiling. That wasn't where I was putting my floor. Understanding how you talk to yourself and understanding that is probably one of the more profound things that I've learned in my life, because it's everything how you talk to yourself. I just want to talk about you, because you said thinking big, and I want to talk about how dangerous is even thinking small.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, by the way, about how the way that we talk to ourselves impacts what we do and how we get up in the morning and what we tell others. I see that in others quite a lot. I think so maybe I'll sidestep for an anecdote first. And then you said mindset could take us all kinds of directions, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So when I was younger as well, as a kid, I didn't have such a good childhood. Won't get into that, but I was very angry at the world and I was blaming everybody for things. I just looked at life differently. And even if somebody didn't respond to me the way I expected, I was already kind of cursing them in my mind and saying, because I was very naive about building big expectations for people and then getting disappointed quickly and then kind of flipping the coin, right? And being mad at them and things like that. Yeah, that's the way my psyche worked at the time. Not very healthy, but then there was a moment, 20 odd years old, maybe 23, and I was also going back to the past and blaming, my stepfather and whatnot. I distinctly remember there was a moment where I said, listen, this can't go on. It's not healthy. It's not getting me anywhere. And I said, you know what? I'm going to forget the past. I'm not going to blame anything on the past. I'm not going to blame anybody. I'm just going to, whatever happens to me, I'm going to practice to take it and flip it and say, okay, here's an opportunity. Now, easier said than done, obviously. And I'm still practicing this and I'm still kind of thinking positive thinking and things like that. But that change of mindset has been a red thread throughout my life. And today, I'm in most cases, even coming back to that, when Amazon told me, we're eliminating your role, right? One of the biggest shocks of your life, you don't know what you're going to do, insecurity and things like that. Even that kind of big news, maybe a day it took me to flip the coin, maybe a day, right? Other things, that people tell me some bad things, or it's microseconds today because my mind is already kind of wired differently. So
Absolutely.
when you talked about mindset and thinking big and thinking small, I believe, people can train themselves to think differently. It takes practice. You need to listen. There's lots of great people to listen to and to learn from. And I try to do that myself. And it never ends, that journey. But it's so much up to us. I respect that other people come from even tougher backgrounds and they have bad experiences, but we still have a lot of control on how we approach life. And so hopefully that resonates also, like
Absolutely.
thinking big, right? That if you think big, and coming back to Amazon's leadership principle, right? And these leadership principles do try to capture mindset, right? So if you think small, you will do small. Okay. You will not think big. You will not have a big vision. You will not lead others with thinking big. There's by the way, other interesting, I'll mention a couple of other Amazon leadership principles because they are related to mindset. And another one is called bias for action. So again, it captures an understanding about people that in many cases we hold off decisions because we think we need more information. And even if we got that more information, the decision wouldn't be much better. So, and by the way, there's a nice metaphor that is used there. You should ask yourself, is this a one-way or a two-way door? So if it's a two-way door, it means that you can walk through it, you can see what's on the other side, and you can walk back. So, and 80% of the cases, if not more, these are the decisions you would make in a day-to-day situation. Or at least you could redesign the decision in such a way that there is a way back, or you could pivot.
Yes.
Some decisions are, one-way doors, choosing a partner for life, or if you're a business, investing in a new location or hiring a new person. That's a one-way door decision because they're going to take a few months to ramp up. They're going to represent you in front of customers. It's a one-way door for them, right? Because they're going to leave their other job. They're going to move to another city, whatever. So those decisions, then yes, first of all, recognize which type of decision it is, and then operate in the right way that is appropriate for that type of decision. So that's another mindset. There's others like learn and be curious. So I really love.
Just dive into each one. So I'm going to step back for a second. And, you said victim. You had a victim mindset. And the transition from a victim mindset to entitlement is so important. If you're in business and you're blaming somebody else for anything, I'm saying any single action in your business, if you're blaming somebody else and you're the CEO, president, leader, you're in a victim mindset. You're not entitled. And you have to own your title because you were the one responsible for navigating that through. And if you've got an employee on your staff that you're blaming, then you need to replace that employee. It's just that simple. You cannot live in a world where you're blaming other people and expect to execute at a high level. So important.
Absolutely.
On your fast decisions, what was the principle there?
Bias for action. So that
Fast
for action. So many decisions in life are reversible. When they are, take them, move forward, learn from that experience, pivot if you need to, but don't hold off the decision.
Yeah, I liked how you said people think they need more data to make their decision. And I see this a lot. They are analyzing the data, analysis paralysis kind of situation. And something in their head says that there's more data to have. And they The trick is just make the decision with the information that you have at hand and move forward. I used to have a mentor that said, indecision is still a decision. And indecision in business will kill you.
Yes.
Your business will die. If you don't make decisions on how you move your business, even if they're wrong, I'd rather you make 100 wrong decisions to move forward than sit and not make any decisions.
Yeah, because as you said, not making a decision is a decision.
Yes. And you'll make the decisions and you'll be wrong. You'll be wrong a lot. But that's how you learn. And that's how you adjust and modify and move forward. It's okay to make a decision and go backwards a little bit, learn from it, and then use that as stepping stones to go forward, right? I struggle with people that have that problem. It really,
Indecisive people.
it hurts me to deal with a lot of those people. But I've learned once you notice that, if you're a leader out there and you have that kind of person on your team and they execute specific tasks very well, understand that as a leader and give them the information and give them the time that they need to come up to the solution. It's a personality trait in a lot of people. And if they're executing other pieces of your business, their job very well, learn to accommodate them, give them the time to make those decisions, or don't put them in decision-making roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. These are, unfortunately, if you're not in a decision-making role in AI, I don't believe you have a job anymore.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
All right. Amir, I've got some questions for you. This is a fun little banter back and forth. How does Amazon's working backwards method shape the way you help organizations adopt generative AI responsibility?
Yeah. Great question. So just to give some background, what is working backwards, right? So Amazon always starts with the customer. Amazon's mission is to be Earth's most customer-centric company. And whenever you want to do
shouldn't that be every company's first goal?
I mean, could be, but Amazon, that was the first, when Amazon was set up, Jeff Bezos said, this is our mission. And it's steadfast since then.
Oh, at the time, venture capital was the mission.
Yeah. I mean, it's not about
for most companies, it was about raising money.
And and you may choose another mission, and some if you're coming back to innovation, some companies think about innovation in a different way. They say, okay, we'll do better than the competition, we'll be best in class, or we'll innovate around technology, right? But Amazon, you don't have to innovate around technology or competition. That's a choice. If you start with the customer and you remain laser focused on the customer, that leads to a long term, that leads to kind of the growth that you've seen at Amazon, right? And of course you can criticize Amazon. There's things there that I don't like either, but it does know how to focus on customers, definitely. And it's not enough it's obsessed, so being obsessed, the first leadership principle at Amazon is customer obsession, by the way. Okay. So it's not enough to be customer centric. You're obsessed about the customer.
Well, they need to transfer that to their driving team, but that's a different story.
Yeah, again, in a big organization, sometimes that plays out harder, but
the last mile's always a hard challenge.
Yeah. But anyway, coming back to working backwards. So you start with the customer and you ask yourself several questions. And, I would take this for granted because when I was doing this with other companies, I expected a lot of companies to think the same way, right? Because the first question you pose to yourself and to your team is, who is the customer? Deceptively simple question. But whenever I would come to teams, even very successful companies with great products and they're leading in their categories, etc., and a team of 5 or 8 people with great leaders and great product people would have very different answers or very unclear. They would say, everybody who buys our product. That's like saying nothing. You have to be very specific when you answer this question. Who is the customer? Then the second question is, what is the customer problem? Because that customer has a plethora of challenges and everything going on in their lives, business life, personal life, settings. So who's the customer? What's the problem? Third one is, what's the most important benefit around that situation or problem? So if you were able to solve something around that problem, what is the one focus that you need? And then there's how do you know what customers needs and want? So you need to get some evidence. And the fifth one is, what does the customer experience look like? Only after you really believe you know how to answer these 5 questions, should you be thinking about, okay, how do we solve this? And then the next step at Amazon would be, you don't build anything, you don't write any software, you don't put any product out there. You jump to the future, you write a fictional press release, imagining we have now solved this problem. 6 months into the future, 8 months into the future, we've done whatever is needed. We know how this looks like. We know this delights the customer. Now, it's very hard to write a one-page press release, which is not marketing fluff. It's not selling your product. It's not like convincing. It's describing what you're actually doing. And there's a certain structure to it. There's like certain paragraphs there that force you into kind of that kind of thinking. But this exercise aligns the team on who's the customer, what are we solving for them, how do we delight them, and both the visionary team, the executives, what resource this builds the business case, but it also aligns the ones who are supposed to build it. Which features are important? What's more important than not? How do we test if we're actually on the right direction, right? When you write this document, and this is Amazon in a very much a narrative culture. So you write this press release, you also amend to it like 5 pages, which are the FAQs, customer FAQs. What would the customers ask us? Like, how much does it cost? How is this different from this product? Or what happens if I need support, etc. And then the last piece, which is the stakeholder FAQs, do you start to think about yourself and your business? Why is this very different from other ways of innovation? Because many companies look at, they do SWOT, right? They look at their strengths, their weaknesses, and say, okay, we will leverage our strengths, our current assets, our current opportunities, and we'll build on top of that. At Amazon, if you have a big vision and say, this is something we really believe we can change in the world, and you have no real way of doing it right now, you would build that muscle because
Right.
you believe this is something you can solve in a way that delights customers like no one else can. So that's a very different way of starting, right? Not starting with your strengths, not starting with your advantages, starting with the customer and working backwards from that. And then, of course, there's a long way, right? That is the first step, making the decision, having that vision. And the other maybe principle worth mentioning is you should have a very strong conviction around the vision, but be flexible about the details. Right? So we have this vision, we know what we want to build, we know how the world should look like, but the way to get there, we don't know, because otherwise somebody would have built it already. Do we do it with this technology? Do we go to market like this? Do we build partnerships? Do we price it like this or like that? We don't know. That's where you need flexibility. So that's kind of conviction about the vision, flexibility about the details and the execution. And that's not easy to do.
Absolutely.
So,
I heard a couple words.
now I remember what was your original question.
Yeah,
How do
it
I
doesn't
bring
matter.
that into AI, right?
So I just want to touch on a couple things really quick. One, SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a
Framework.
very typical business, maybe 101, 201 kind of coursework of an analysis that you would do to see. Typically, I do a SWOT when I'm looking for low-hanging fruit in a situation where I'm a little cash strapped and I need to find some money in one of my businesses really quick to overcome something.
Yeah.
That's when I bust out the SWOT, because really what I'm looking for is that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's what I'm really looking for when I'm doing a SWOT, and it typically works.
Yeah.
Right. It's a great thing. I'm going to talk about conviction. It is not unfrequent in my life. I was an early adopter of internet. I do podcasts. I operate data centers. I own boxing school. I do all kinds of stuff. And it's not uncommon for someone to drop into my inbox and give me very specific advice on how I should be running one of my businesses, or how I should be performing my comedy, or how I should be doing something. And those voices echo in your head, especially as a young man, I'm assuming as a young woman too, when you have what you see as peers coming at you, giving you advice. What I've had to decide is that people that have a job are not my peers. People that aren't doing the things that I'm doing aren't my peers. We're in different places, but it's still a challenge to hear these Bitcoin's not real money. You're crazy for doing
Podcast
that.
is a crazy thing to do.
AI, it's not real. AI doesn't give the personal touch like humans do, but if you know how to prompt, it's a different ball game. So I just want to know, and this goes back to mindset. I'm assuming you've had similar confrontations throughout your career on your conviction and how you move forward. How does an entrepreneur distill all that noise and get it out of there and just get it out of their head? Because it is cancerous.
Yeah. Actually, the way I look at it is kind of, I try to find a balance, because sometimes those voices do have wisdom, or at least they have something I should be looking at or explore. So my first step is being curious. Okay, why are they saying this? So I try to ask, okay, understand, right? Maybe there's something that I've missed. Maybe there's a blind spot there, right? Maybe when I was younger, I didn't do that so much and I made the mistakes. And that's why I learned, in retrospect, I should have listened to that person. They had something that I could have gained from. So kind of more adult advice to myself would be listen more, but don't let that influence your original belief in the principles that you have. Like you said, people come from different perspectives. They might not know what you know, or have their own experiences influence their own conviction. So weigh you know the wisdom that they bring, the suggestions that they bring, weigh it against what you know. And if you think you don't know enough, then go out and find out more.
Absolutely.
But once you've done that and you've gathered the extra information that you thought you needed, again, without dwelling on it too much, then take the decision. And again, that's maybe a personality trait of myself. Once I take a decision, I commit to it. By the way, coming back to another Amazon principle, it says disagree and commit. Okay, have backbone, disagree and commit. That's the full principle,
Okay.
right? So you should have backbone about that kind of conviction that you have. If somebody else in the team is saying something that you disagree with, then express that disagreement, but explain, right? Give the reasoning behind that. But once a decision is made, then commit to it and wholeheartedly try to make it happen. So if you take it to a personal perspective, right? So you should have some idea about what you want to do. You should have some conviction. You should have kind of a backbone that drives you. Maybe disagree with yourself or listen to all those voices that come in and maybe there's something wrong. I need to weigh it. But once you commit, then all in until something teaches you differently. But that's a very interesting principle, I would say.
I like that principle. I'm gonna have to look up the values at the principles of Amazon for sure, and just really study those for a while, because I like that. Have backbone. What was it? Have backbone.
Disagree and commit. Have backbone. Disagree and commit.
So I just want to, my tip on creating that backbone. Once you know what your conviction is, write it down as clearly as possible. In business, there's something called a SMAC, systematic, methodical, and consistent rule set. That should be your baseline for business, and that is your conviction. So over time, conviction can get cloudy because we're getting hit with different directions, and sometimes the boulder's heavy to push up the hill. So you kind of lose that conviction, but you can go back and write it down as clearly as you possibly can, so you can go back to that. I hang mine on my mirrors in my house. I've got them all over the place, right? Because when you get in the daily grind and you just get in this momentum of going, and you kind of forget why you're doing what you're doing, or what your conviction actually is. And it's so important because it will pull you out of the darker days for sure, if you know what that conviction is and you can hold to it. It's really, really important.
But I want to come back, because originally you asked me, how do I connect working backwards with AI? And I want to come back to that question. So customers come to me and they say, okay, with all the hype, I want to use AI for this or for that use case. And then I ask them some questions, and I don't start with the technology. I said, what are you trying to achieve? What is the problem you're trying to solve? And sometimes I would tell them, listen, it's not an AI solution. It's something else. You need to do this or that. You need to maybe change your operation model, or maybe a different technology, or just get your data in order. So even shooting my own foot by saying you don't need my services, right? There's something else you need to do. I build trust there. I kind of become their trusted advisor in many cases, even if they might come back to me in a few months, or they might spread the word that I'm a trustworthy person or company, right? So when companies come to me and say, we want AI, I said, wait, what are you trying to do? What's the problems that you're facing now? Have you solved other problems that you need to solve before AI, right? And by the way, sometimes it may lead you to help them solve a bigger problem. I think that's also an interesting aspect of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once you start solving problems, then everything else kind of resolves itself. Amir, how can someone use the RIGHT, and that is the acronym RIGHT, and I'll ask you to describe what that means, prompting formula to level up their prompting today?
Yes. So I'm assuming, a lot of your audience heard about prompting, and, basically the way that I explain prompting, because it's a kind of a technical, it's learning how to talk to AI, right? It's a different entity. Some people still need to learn how to talk to humans, but we'll put that aside. But by the way, it might be a good leadership principle in general. I should think about that. But so you need to know how to talk to these systems to get the most out of them. Because a lot of people, when these, came out, ChatGPT and then other tools, they had like a one short sentence request from it or instruction, and then initially they got impressed by the response, but then it doesn't go deep enough. It's not detailed enough, even with the more advanced models that we have today. So what I came up with, because I want to avoid the technical when I talk to non-technical people like business leaders and functional experts and so on, I try to encapsulate what works in a way that they understand. So I came up with this acronym, and it's RIGHT. So R stands for role. So imagine you're talking to somebody who has a specific role, either an employee or a service provider or somebody that is supposed to be good at that task that you want them to do. So say if it's writing some marketing content, a blog post or whatnot. So you're in this field, this is your role. The reason this works is because these models, basically they swallow the internet, a lot of human knowledge, and they know a lot about many things. Once you tell them this is the role you need to put on, they look in a specific domain. So they don't look about how is history written or how is children literature written. No, okay, your role is a marketing expert, so
Yep.
I'll kind of focus my attention on marketing content that I've learned.
Yeah. So pause for a second. What does right stand for?
Right is R is role, I is information, G is goal, H is how, and T is tweak or tool specific. So I'll explain. Thank you for kind of taking a step back.
Yeah, we don't have enough time to go through each stage.
Okay. So yeah,
we need to wrap that up. So let's just go through what is the right formula, what is it, and narrow that down, and how can someone use it to improve their prompting today?
Okay, so right, tell what the role is. Information, give it all the context, all the information you have about your business, about your industry, what your products are. G is two sides of the coin. What is the goal that you want that tool to help you with, and how is it part of a bigger goal? Okay, how is it going to help the team or your company? Right, so it has some more context. Age is how, again, it has two aspects to it. Is how do I want the output to be? So, write it short, long, this language, this style, right? But also how to think about the process, how detailed. This is the first step. This is what is my way of thinking when I try to solve a similar problem. And T for, tweaking. Different tools have different things that you can. So for example, in ChatGPT, you can choose which model, GPT-5, GPT-4o, they just had a big noise about it. Do you need reasoning for this? So different tools allow you to make different choices that impact the output. So that's in essence what RIGHT stands for.
Wonderful. Now I will say in my version of GPT-5, it's how to think is built in now with the high end version that I have. But that costs $200 a month for the version that I have. But it's all those things and these are narrowing down, but I absolutely agree on a lot of those things. And are we allowed to put the rule set for the right prompting method in the show notes?
Absolutely. And I'm also, my approach is very much sharing. So a lot of what I talk about, I put out there. I share my presentations whenever I do something with a customer. I don't believe in keeping cards close to my chest. So people are also welcome to reach out to me and get even some more information.
And if they wanted to read more about the right prompting methodology, because I think having a methodology for almost anything is appropriate and it can help you really scale, where would they go to find that more language about the right method?
So what we can do maybe is we can set up a link where I put all kind of resources available for your audience, and you can put that in the show notes, and it will probably be under thinkbigleaders.com/whatever we decide that to be. And I'll share some things there, including the right formula.
Yeah. So, and I'll tell you, I'll pull up my skirt a little bit. One of the things that I use my version of AI for is to come up with my interview questions. And I don't always know who I'm talking to, right? There's a lot of Amirs on the planet. And, I've got your email address and company name. And one of the things that I always ask is like, how do you know that this is the right question for this person, right? And it will go through and then it will help me have the confidence. Challenge your AIs.
Yes.
Challenge the answers that they give you. Ask it, why did you give me that answer? How do you know that's the right answer? And really push them, because intelligence is just being able to hold multiple concepts in your head, knowing that they all might be true. And you're just getting an output. So it's your responsibility to make sure that the output is accurate.
Absolutely. And let me just one more tip or exercise for people to try out. So a lot of people are used to, okay, this is something I'll ask it, I'll get an answer. Or I'll ask for a task, I'll get an answer. Try to flip the coin. Give it a task to ask you questions. How are you thinking about things? So tell it, you're going to interview me. You're a business consultant. You're a challenger. You're a devil's advocate. Ask me questions until you are sure you understand why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking about this problem. It will make you think so much better about your way of thinking and teach you a lot about, maybe the gaps that you have in your thinking.
And I mean, a computer has been my best friend since the age of 7, and AI has been just a total delight for me to have somebody to sit and talk about quantum cluster entanglement and all that kinds of stuff, that I have this literally the smartest people or the smartest beings on the planet that I can just chat with at 2 o'clock in the morning has been one of the best things to ever happen to my personal life in my
Absolutely.
existence. So,
Yeah.
all right, Amir, we're coming to the end of the show, and I've got here the questions that were asked, not that were asked, but were presented on the Diary of a CEO. Are you ready for this question?
Yes, I am.
No idea what it is. This is a little frightening.
Do I get to call a friend if I?
This question comes from David Harwood. What lesson have you learned from your lowest point, and is there anything about it that you're grateful for?
So, what was the last part? Is there?
Is there anything about your lowest point that you're grateful for?
Interesting. What is my lowest point? I have to think backwards to first. Yeah, I mean, coming back to the story that I told earlier, right? So I felt very lonely until I had that switch, right, in my life. And sometimes I still fall into that trap, right? Because I had to build all kinds of protections around myself as a child and so forth. I kind of closed myself to others. And the lesson I learned that this is a tough place to be in. It's very hard, day in, day out, to be lonely, right? And I shut down my emotions. Everything built up inside, it would erupt every now and again randomly, right? People that were not to blame, etc. So I think the lesson I learned there is this is not sustainable. And if you have that kind of issue, if you have that blocker, and it could manifest itself in different ways, sooner or later you're going to have to face it. I don't want to speak in generalities. I understood that I had to face it because otherwise it would not end up well. So my lowest point was being like feeling very, very, very lonely in the world. And that was like a very much internal feeling. You could put externalities aside. And my lesson there was I need to deal with the core issue if I want to move on.
Absolutely. It's profound. And, I see a lot of similarities in myself there. That snapping, not being able to control things, not being able to control emotions. It's an internal battle. And it is entrepreneurship's lonely place, right? When you start looking in and you start taking all that stuff, and you find gratitude for your breath work and all the other stuff, and then you find your self-love. And then once you find that, it's like this, the scene from Pulp Fiction when they open the suitcase, all this light comes out, and you're just, it's a different feeling, and you get to walk on this planet in a different way than you did before. And it's a really beautiful thing once you realize that, you overcome it. And I don't think anybody overcomes it completely, but we're all on our journey. We're all on our path. And you're absolutely right. Entrepreneurship is a very, very lonely place because you have a conviction that other people have, and you're trying to build something that doesn't exist, and you're trying to do it on your own terms. And our society wasn't built for that. But I believe over the next 5 or 10 years that we're going to need a lot of leaders, and we're going to have to be built for that. We're going to have to do the work that we need to do to usher in a whole new world of technology. This is different than anything we've ever seen before. It's different than .com. It's different than crypto. It's got everything. Everything is under the hood, every single industry. And when you start thinking about the cross sections between AI and CRISPR and Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain,
and wait for it to come to the physical world with robots and autonomous vehicles and material science, that's going to be crazy.
Coming. It is here. It's here already. The
Yes.
masses haven't seen it.
Yes.
I think the estimate is about 100,000 humanoid robots this year, and 10xing that every year moving forward until there's 5 to 10 robots per human on this planet, which sounds delightful for me, but I know it's scary and to a lot of people. So
yeah,
Amir, thank you so much for your
it's
time.
disruption from here on.
Yes, these are weekly bubbles that you've never seen, and they're just popping nonstop. So we don't know where this ends. I've got some ideas.
And we should build resilience. Coming back to what you should be equipping yourself with. One of the main things is resilience, right? I think curiosity and resilience
and faith. Yep, I'd put those 3 things right at the top. So, Amir, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. If somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would they get in contact with you?
So 2 ways. First, thinkbigleaders.com. That's my company website. There's contact me there. We'll also, as I said, make a special page for your listeners so they can get some specific resources and maybe the AI powered tools that I mentioned. And on LinkedIn, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. The best thing is not just to follow me, but actually connect with me, because that allows me to get to know you and learn from you. So yeah, just reach out on LinkedIn. We can put that link as well, maybe in the show notes. I always like to build my network, learn from others. So yeah, don't hesitate.
Fantastic, Amir. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.